Today is September 27, 2018, and thank you so much for meeting with me here at the Phoenix Theatre in London.
Pleasure. Nice to meet you.
Can you please introduce yourself?
My name is Tara Overfield Wilkinson, and I am the Associate Director and Associate Choreographer for Come From Away.
What sparked your interest in theatre in the first place?
I actually started as a performer. So I went to a theatre school when I was very, very young. I had the most supportive and amazing parents who really couldn't afford to send me to an expensive theatre school, but they worked extremely hard. They took on second and third jobs to make that happen for me, which then spurred me on to work extremely hard to make that worth their while. And I went to a wonderful theatre school called Sylvia Young's, which is in the West End. That led me on to having a career in performance, and I was in lots of West End shows as a performer for about 15 years. And within that time, we realised there was a skill set that I had, which was noting and being aware of everybody else's positions. So, I'd be doing my own role, but I was also very able to learn lots of other roles. So I became a dance captain. And when you become a dance captain, part of that is noting, rehearsing, taking auditions sometimes. And I realised that I loved that side of the job. And then I was in a show called The Full Monty, which was playing at the Prince of Wales Theatre. And I had some throat problems. I started to get real issues with my voice, so I went to see a specialist, and I had a cyst on my vocal cords, which I had to have an operation and have the cyst removed. I was able to go back and sing, I was able to go back and perform, but there was something in me just decided that was a moment, that was a meant to be moment to stop the singing, stop performing, and become a director and a choreographer. So I used all the skills I'd been doing for the last 15 years as a dance captain and decided to put myself out there just on the dark side, as I like to call it, and I just let it known to a lot of people that I wasn't going to be singing or dancing myself anymore, but the empathy I have as a performer is what's taken me in the direction now of being a creative, and I love it. So that decision was made 16 years ago, so I've now had half a career as a performer and half my career as a creative in the West End and UK tours and around the world, so loving it.
How did you get involved in Come From Away?
I was very, very honoured to be approached by the Come From Away creatives and producers due to, I worked on a show called Memphis, which was at the Shaftesbury Theatre, and the wonderful Christopher Ashley was the director, and we had the producers, Randy, Sue, Joe and John, which are the same producers on Come From Away. They were also on Memphis, and I believe they were very happy with the job I did over there. We did a big cast change halfway through the year, and I had to put Matt Cardle into the show when Killian Donnelly left, and they kind of left me to it, which was amazing because Christopher Ashley was so busy. I think he might have even been doing this show. He was probably preparing this at the time in La Jolla. And when they came back and saw the show, they were extremely happy. So I think that was the credit and the reference that gave me the opportunity to come on and do Come From Away. And I was thrilled. I was actually in Canada. So I'd never been to Canada. And it turns out that we have long lost family, and my mum has some relatives in Canada. So we arranged a big surprise birthday thing for her to meet our relatives in Canada. And that's when I went out there. And it was while I was there that John Brandt, from the producer of Come From Away, called me. And he just said, I've got this interesting and amazing project that I think you'll love. And he started explaining it. And then I said, gosh, that's so crazy. I'm actually in Canada right now. This feels really meant to be. And I'm quite a big believer in fate and, what's meant for you won't pass by you. So sitting in Canada for the first time, being told about a Canadian show that they'd like me to work on, I had to make the dates work.
Did you see the show on Broadway or in Canada before?
Yeah, they very generously flew me out to New York, and I got to see the show 3 times, and I met with the associate directors and their production managers and people over in New York. They walked me on stage, I looked at all the chairs. I nearly decided not to do it when I saw how many markings were on the floor for all the different chair moves. But it was an incredible trip, and obviously I saw the show for the first time, and well, for any of you who have seen Come From Away, you know that that's really important to have seen it for the first time and know that you want to work on it.
Is it common for associate director also be an associate choreographer?
Sometimes, yeah. I think because of my background, coming from the performing side of it and being a dance captain, there are shows like this one where it should be seamless. The choreography and the direction, they really shouldn't feel like you were in two separate rooms learning a dance routine in there and then the scripts. So with a show like this, it helps if you have some choreography background. Therefore, the two just merge together, and it makes sense to have one person take care of all of those things. But we also have an incredible dance captain and assistant dance captain on the show. So they're also standbys, and when they're not performing or needed to step in if someone's on holiday, then they also come out front and note the show and on the little details of choreography as well. So yeah, we have a good team.
What exactly do you do?
My job entails learning the show, thoroughly learning the show, and I make up what we call a Bible, a show Bible, and I take on board every single detail that the director wants the show to be, and my job is then to maintain it. So 8 shows a week for any human. It's a lot. They, the cast can get tired, they need to be remotivated, they need to be reminded if some of the choices they're making aren't necessarily the style that the director wanted. And it's my job to go and tell them and remind them on a daily basis if we need to rehearse, practice, and just bring it to a place where when an audience member sees the show for their first time, it should also feel like it's the first time for the cast every day as well. And the other big part of my job are working with the standbys. So we come in and we do a lot of rehearsals during the day, and our standbys on this show, we have 8 incredibly talented, amazing artists that cover all 12 parts. But because of, if you think of it like the lottery, you never quite know which balls are going to come up. So you don't know who's going to be sick or injured on a certain day when somebody else is on holiday. So our 8 standbys have 5 covers each, and we have to rehearse them, and we have to rehearse them regularly. That was it. That was all the main point about being an associate director will be to maintain the show, make sure the artists are all fully motivated every night and doing what they're supposed to be doing, and make sure that the curtain still stays up and the show looks fantastic when we have standbys replacing the actors that play the show every night.
Can you tell me about the tech week? What was it like before the previews, when you were just preparing?
So there's the whole process leading up to the show. Obviously we have rehearsals, which were 4 weeks of rehearsals in London. And then we all went over to Dublin and we got into the theatre, and that is then called Tech Week. So we have the lights and the sound, costumes, everything comes together there. And it's quite an intense process. They're long hours because you stop and start all through the day and get every detail correct. So say for instance Emma, who plays Janice, every time she runs out and has to come to a spot for 9:35 a.m, you need to make sure she's bang on her spot every time, because there'll be a special light that appears, and if she's too far left, too far right, that's takes time to just really home in on all those moments and make sure the lights are hitting them properly. And then we get ourselves ready for previews. And the first time you get to show it to an audience is obviously very scary for everybody, and it's just a joy when you finally see everything come together, all the hard work, the lights, the sound, the wigs and wardrobe. There's an incredible amount of people that work backstage to make a show happen. Our stage management team make sure every prop is exactly where it needs to be. The hats are prepared in the drawers so that they're there ready for screeching. And just in general, there's a lot of people that work on the show to make it happen.
I like the sign right behind your shoulder, STFD, and grab a chair.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about the choreography. You mentioned there are so many spikes on the stage. What was it like to teach the cast this choreography?
I tell you what was very interesting. When I went to see the show on Broadway, I was so happy to see where the direction went. Chris Ashley is incredible at putting your focus where you need it to be. So you're watching the scenes, you're watching how it works. And to be honest, it took me a few times to realise how tricky the chairs were, because they do it so beautifully and effortless that one minute you're in a big town council and then the next minute you're on the plane and all the chairs come together at once. Now that takes a lot of rehearsals, that takes a lot of going over it time and time again, hitting the spike marks properly. And I don't think anyone in the building or anyone involved in Come From Away realised how difficult that would be. It seems very simple when you watch it on, you know, from the audience point of view, you watch it, it just seems such a simple thing. You just put a chair down and we're in the aeroplane. When you have 12 people walking together with chairs in their hands, it's actually not as easy as it looks. So I'm really thrilled that Kelly won the choreography Olivier, because I'm sure a lot of people will look at the show and say, oh, it's just a lot of stomping around on there. But I think anyone with a good eye will see that every detail of the show is choreographed, including the chairs and the tables, the torches, all the things that happen.
Good evening, ladies and
are
gentlemen. Would you
choreographed.
please make your own stage for warm-up?
Our stage warm-up call going out, so we're in the Phoenix Theatre at the moment, so it's all always going on. Everything here happens. So right now the cast will be making their way to the stage and doing their warm-up. So they'll do a vocal warm-up, physical warm-up, because again, just the core strength needed. These chairs and tables are really heavy, by the way. I try and shove them around in understudy rehearsals, and you need a good muscle for it. So they all go down and warm up now. So in a little while, we'll probably hear the music going on and the singing happening behind us.
Can you walk me through your typical day of work? What's your schedule like?
My schedule varies because I work on other shows. This company are particularly good about me also following my other career and other commitments I had before I started Come From Away. I also work on Motown the Musical, which is touring the country, and I go and check on that show once a month and stay in touch with resident directors there, make sure everything's okay, take auditions, rehearsals when necessary. That goes alongside the understudy rehearsals and the show watches here. Plus I've just directed a show which is at the other palace in Victoria, and that took up a lot of time. So I was rehearsing 10 till 6 nearly every single day, then going into meetings, pre-production, coming over, watching shows here, noting. So there's been a point probably in this last 2 months where my schedule has been 14-hour days. Literally just going home to sleep, turn around, come back and start work on one of the 3 shows. I sort of make the analogy of that little clown that runs around spinning plates. At one point you can't let the plates wobble and fall. But now all 3 shows are up and running, I get to have some time back. So I get the odd lay-in now. Mostly rehearsals, when you do understudy rehearsals, will start about 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The theatre industry in general, we tend to sort of do everything later because the shows doesn't start till 7:30. This is quite a short show because it's straight through without an interval, but my other 2 shows are quite long shows because they have a 20-minute interval. Then there's a second half which is an hour and 10 minutes long. So sometimes you're not getting on your train and getting home till 11, 12 o'clock at night. And like any person who does a normal job, obviously even if you work in an office job, you don't come home and go straight to bed. You sort of want to catch up on your TV, you want to have some dinner, talk to your partner. So I think we tend to do a lot of late nights, and therefore our days start a little bit later. It's not because we're lazy.
You mentioned a resident director. I was wondering, what's the difference between the responsibilities of a resident director and associate director?
There's a lot of shows which just have a resident director, and that person will sometimes be in the building. So there'll be maybe an understudy on the show, and they don't have to go on all the time. Therefore, they're available to watch the show regularly, and that's the resident part of it. It means they're there all the time. They can see the show often and give lots of notes. An associate director is usually the next chain of command to the director, and the associate would deal mainly with the audition process, the standbys, and would have a little bit more time between seeing the shows. So like anything with hair, when your hair grows, you don't notice it growing over the week. So therefore an associate usually doesn't do every single day show watches. They'll come back, let time go, see what's happening with the show, really see if the energy's changed or if something's grown, as we say. And then as an associate, you come back in and you get your scissors out if you need to, and you ask people to to take it back to what it was meant to be. So I guess that's the main difference in the title. A resident is more resident, an associate usually comes back and visits.
When you see the show and take notes, what do you focus on? Because there are so many different nuances, and if you see it so many times, day after day, it's easy to miss it, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I only watch 3 or 4 shows a week on Come From Away, so I don't see every single show. I have a monitor in my office, and that has the live show feed that goes through every single day. That way I can sit with an archive video, which is when we did the first shows here at the Phoenix Theatre, and the director was here and he said that's the show. He loves the pace, he loved the energy, that was what he wanted. So I sometimes go back and check the archive side by side with the live theatre show at night on my monitor, and that way I can really see if things have become louder or softer, taking too long, because you'll find with comedy everything has to really go at a great pace, and even that point where you pause for 1 second too long and then carry on speaking, an actor can come off and ask me, why didn't I get my laugh? I didn't understand what happened tonight. And usually I can check and say, well, you've slowed that down, or you've gone, you sped through it, no one understood what you were saying. There's big things I have to check, like diction and clarity, because if you can imagine saying the same lines over and over and over again, 8 shows a week, you have to just make sure that it's always energised and people can always understand what's being said. So I check diction, I check pace, I check energy, spacing. Sometimes things just move over what was once on. We have numbers along the front of the stage to allow people to see where they're at. So if you're on left 2, you have to be there every single day for the light to hit you, and if on the odd occasion you decide, I just can't be bothered to look down and check where I am, you migrate over to left 4, you'll be in the dark. So little things like that, sometimes the actors can't feel that they're doing it, and an outside eye, like me, will be able to see it and be able to go back and say very clearly, you've moved over, you haven't realised you've moved over, but you have. So you're always checking those sort of things.
Do you have an assistant director?
No, I don't have an assistant director. As I say, I have 2 dance captains on the show that are here resident, so they're here every show if they're not performing in it. But I don't have any other person to work with on the show. If I have any questions, I just go straight back to Chris Ashley and ask him directly.
I heard that he was in Toronto a while ago. How often does he visit London company of Come From Away?
He was here for the whole process of putting the show on, and all through the tech and preview periods and the press night. Then he went away for a few months and then came back when we got nominated for lots of lovely Olivier Awards. So while he was here for the Oliviers, he came in and checked on the show, we talked, and he was very, very happy, which I'm thrilled about. And I should imagine we're about to go into another audition process now, because we're just finding out who's going to be staying and who's leaving in the next year's
Ladies
cast.
and gentlemen, please
Sorry.
make your way to the stage for warm-up. We have a band call at 6:30, so we have 10 minutes left of warm-up. 10 minutes left of warm-up. Thank you.
Because we're now going into a cast change for next year, which means we have to audition new people, and Chris will come over and get the final say on who gets the job.
Is there anything you would like to talk about?
I guess it's something that I find interesting in our industry, the theatre industry, coming from being a performer to going into being a creative on the show. The one thing I've realised that's changed is obviously the social media and the way things are promoted and marketed nowadays. It's interesting, a lot of people say about famous people. Why do you have famous people in shows? And it's a shame, because some shows really do require someone with a high profile, because that will market the show and that will make more and more people come and see it. And obviously the main goal for everybody in theatre is that people come and see it. And in order for it to reach the mainstream audience, sometimes famous people are put into a show. And then occasionally a beautiful show like Come From Away hits your doors, which doesn't have the same sort of famous aspect to it. It's just the title and the story and the reputation of a show like this is what makes it so successful. And I think that's always really, really wonderful, because we have so many incredible musical theatre actors that just deserve every job and every role, and the fact that they can take in a show like Come From Away, which doesn't require anything other than your talent, I think is just wonderful. And it's just the way it is today in today's society, with TV and social media. Everybody wants to know who's in the show. If you're doing a new show of anything and they say who's in it, you know, you have to tell them if there's a celebrity of some sort. But I love the fact that there's a real theatre public that look out for shows like Falsettos and other shows that don't necessarily have a celebrity attached to them. And I think those shows are the ones people should think about going to see, because you're more likely to see the most raw talent and trained talent, actually, raw and trained. You'll get an incredible performance from artists that are the best singers and the best actors you'll find in the world. So I always urge anybody who watches interviews like this just to keep an eye out for certain shows that you wouldn't normally go and see, and maybe doesn't have a big pop star in it or something. Just I'd love for theatre audiences to keep an eye on that as we go along.
And if someone is interested in this kind of career, where do you start? What advice would you give to someone who wants to be an associate director or choreographer?
So often people get in touch with me who have either had a similar career path, have been a performer, have been a dance captain, and they will get in touch with me and ask if I could meet for a coffee, and we'll talk about how they step into this side of the show business. Now, I was extremely lucky. I had a wonderful director and choreographer who was doing extremely well in America, and he came over to London and needed an assistant on a show. There wasn't a big budget, so there was no money really to pay for an assistant. And at that point in my career, I just wanted the experience. I wanted to see if I was good at it, and I wanted to see if it was a path that I wanted to take. So I actually took on 3 jobs. I went and did some assisting for shows that I knew didn't have a budget for to pay an assistant or a resident, but I chose to go and do those jobs anyway, because it gave me the experience. And I think that's probably the best advice I can give anybody who wants to go into this side of things. It's all about experience. You work with good directors, bad directors. Everything I do, even at the ripe old age of 46, every show I work on is a learning experience. And you just have to keep listening and learning, never feel like you know better than anybody else. I think from a young age I was pretty bossy, so it was always going to be a job that I fell into where I get to direct and ask people to do what I want them to do. So I think it suits me brilliantly. I believe a very big part of what I like to do when you're this side of the job is to show respect. I respect the performers. I have empathy because I was one. I respect all the departments that work alongside the performers and alongside me. I respect all our stage management, all the teams of people that work extremely hard to put on a show. And I think if you've got respect for everybody and you value everybody, then you usually find that comes back to you. And therefore, when you are a director and you're asking people to do things, it just really helps if there's mutual respect. So for any budding associate directors out there, just keep listening, keep learning, and just show as much respect to everybody as you can.
Do you think, how old is too old to start cold if you don't have any theater training, I guess, and you're maybe 25, maybe 35? How do you convince people, even if it's a free job, to give you a chance, to be an intern or something like that?
I think age is not... the good thing about being this side of the camera and this side of the stage is there's not really a shelf life. I could still be directing into my 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s even. I've just been working with Berry Gordy on Motown, and he's literally retired this week. He's 89 years old. So I think if anybody has a dream to do anything, and the main thing in life is to be happy. So if you're 25, 35, 45 and you want to go and do something, you just have to go after it. And there's a lot of, as I said earlier, I believe in fate. There's a lot of right time and right place. I think if you're good to people, they'll remember you. I think there needs to be a lot of support in our industry. I'm not a fan of anybody ripping out, somebody else's performance or pulling down shows. I think you have to support each other, and that means if someone comes to me and asks if they can shadow me. I've had a lovely young director that's been working with us on Come From Away, young man called Shamey. He's an Irish director, and he approached us very early and said, would he be able to just come in and shadow? He didn't want to get paid for it, he just wanted to experience. And how did I feel about that? So I said yes, and he came and he helped. And then Shamey became really useful, because once we started rehearsals, we realised that with the 8 standbys and me reading in for the other 4, it was extremely useful to have another body come and help us. So we rang Shamey and said, come on, you've had some experience on the show now, can you come in and help us out? And then he started to get a bit of got a bit of a payment and a fee for doing that. So sometimes just putting yourself out there, you just don't know what opportunities it opens up for you. So I think that's the main thing, no matter how old you are. If you have a dream to do it, just go make yourself do it. Make yourself known.
Ladies and gentlemen of the band,
We should stop because you have to give notes.